Cherise got to spend some time with Rebecca last night. We just marvel at her personal story, huh?
She's probably the poster child for perseverance and what loyalty in our society looks like now, given that most people aren't loyal to their companies. She's the poster child for it.
Being born in a village in China with no water, no electricity, and now running robotics at FedEx, that's a pretty good accomplishment.
I think there's a little testament to fortitude and grit.
We're here to talk about partnership, and there's some really interesting things going on in the world of partnership. I'm blessed to be here with Cherise Dean and Catherine Kennedy. Catherine Kennedy's with a little company called Microsoft, and Cherise is with another little company called KPMG. And they're all about partnership and interesting things we've heard over the last couple of days about KPMG's big partnership with Microsoft and the different things you're working on. And of course, Microsoft shook the world up earlier this year with their long-time partnership and investment in OpenAI, and then the introduction of ChatGPT with OpenAI. And I think it was really interesting. Craig didn't get to it this morning, but he told me a little bit ago that OpenAI has a different corporate structure. You can't really buy the company, and it was designed that way. So Microsoft has invested $10 billion in OpenAI and owns 0% of the company. But they got access to the technology, and that's what you guys are busy doing now with one another and with your client set. And Catherine, you work with one company you're focused on, which is ServiceNow.
That's right.
And tell us what your job is at servicing ServiceNow and how important a role AI is playing there.
Yeah, absolutely. As you all know, ChatGPT, OpenAI, it's everywhere, right? So it's everywhere in our business right now. So what I specifically do is I run the business unit with ServiceNow within Microsoft. And what that means is we actually co-innovate with this partnership. And so AI is at the forefront of a lot of what we're doing right now. We also build together. So on each other's platforms, we're customers of each other. We also go to market together. So I oversee all of the marketing, all of the co-innovation, and then all of our sales together. So
what does that mean, you go to market together? What is you creating products together?
Yes, we will create products together, integrations together, and then we'll go to market together. So anywhere you see Microsoft and ServiceNow together, that usually comes from my team.
And Cherise, you've been on all sides of KPMG. You described yourself as a geek, which I think is a mischaracterization, but you've been on the delivery of services side, you've been on the tech side, and then only recently moved over to be the social lead for ESG efforts across the platform. And I have to betray a point of view, at least, probably a prejudice, and that is when big-time corporate Western world decides that something should happen, it generally happens. So it can be mandated, yes, but I think you two represent two different companies that have made a deliberate choice to make sure good things happen culturally and socially. And of course, that spills into the AI world. We heard from Craig earlier about how AI will probably best be governed. And I think what you guys are doing is an epitome of not only bringing science to the table and to your customers in a very prudent and practical way, but being really conscious of the social consequences of that. Give us a little bit of what your new world is like, being the US social lead for ESG efforts.
I think my new world is utopic for me. And the reason why is because I have always worked in for-profit spaces, except when I did work for the government, and that was my first job coming out of college. And it was for another firm with one less letter. And when I was thinking about how I wanted to leave the world and being a mother and having kids, I started really thinking about like what legacy looked like and what I wanted to be known for and what legacy that my kids would be able to uphold. And so that really shifted my mindset as it related to what I was doing, right? So being coming out of school, working in tech, and delivering for clients across the world, I thought that I had the best of the best from a corporate standpoint. But when you start thinking about the impact that you're making, and you realize that while you think you're doing this amazing thing, building software or delivering profits for your firm, when you think about what you could do if you just pivoted slightly and thought about how you could impact people with those profits and or include them in increasing profits so that they had a positive outcome and a positive outcome for the community, it's not a big shift. And so I was asked to take all of my background in tech, in operations, across all of the industries, and I've worked across 5, and including tech, and take that and help our clients solve those problems or come up and I would say overcome the challenges of how they should think about being socially focused, socially impactful, but also driving value. And so the way that we think about social at KPMG is we drive authentic value for our customers, for the community, and for our relationships, i.e. our suppliers, vendors, and partners. And we can do it in a creative way, and we can do it in a value productive way. And that makes it very easy to then have partnerships with companies like Microsoft and ServiceNow, because we recognize that for-profit is going to be responsible for the shift.
Yep.
It is not going to just be government. It is not going to just be community-based institutions. It is really going to be for-profit firms, because we drive the outcomes and we drive the markets. And so when we understand that and then we can partner, we know that we can achieve great results. And so that's why our partnership has been not only prolific, but we're trying to move at the speed of AI in trying to start getting these outcomes out in the market. So a lot to do, a lot to see, but I think we have the right mind frame.
It's the epitome of the old adage of doing well while doing good.
Yes.
And Catherine, you're at an earlier stage of the platform. How do you look at foundationally the AI tools that you build in the safeguards? There's been lots of discussion here over the last couple of days about the perils.
Yes.
And how do you guys think about appropriate guardrails? I think collectively what you're doing, which is saying, hey, we need to do this, and without hurting our profit potential in any way, we can also do good. How do you think about the guardrails to make sure that is the case for you, your clients, and the products you deploy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how do we think about the guardrails? I think, so first, we have to start by being inclusive, right? Having the dialogue with multiple stakeholders, from social scientists to community representatives, right? Including everybody, AI specialists as well, right, in this conversation, right? There's so many different people that are impacted, right, and so many different communities that are impacted. So we have to be thoughtful about all of the different scenarios. The next piece, I would say, on the guardrails is having transparency in our process, having accountability, and then also really focusing on the affected communities, right? And how what we're doing could impact these affected communities, right? So having this open dialogue, creating these transparency and processes, and then the accountability are absolutely critical to the success, right? But also being very cognizant that there's a lot of fear, right, and uncertainty out in the market right now. We see it every day, right?
But you guys work for a couple of the most trusted brands and institutions in the country. So not only it's what you do, but how people perceive what you're doing that'll give them the confidence that, oh, if Microsoft and ServiceNow, aided and abetted by KPMG, are behind this product, they have to have some sense of confidence that your goals and intentions are good.
That's right.
I would say yes and no, right? Because they also
dare you
recognize.
say no.
I know. I'm a mom, so I've perfected no.
A mom of 3 boys, 2 of whom are in their teenage years.
God help me.
Lots of no. Lots
of no. Or not now. But I will tell you that we see it, right? So the reality is, because we're a for-profit firm, and we have the duality and the responsibility to demonstrate our stewardship out in the market, right? And that looks like us putting in the frameworks, to what Catherine was saying, putting in the frameworks, and then also communicating the frameworks. But it also is, we have to demonstrate that we're actually walking the talk that we say, which means we also have to have the teams and that are diverse and aren't, I would say, bias mimicking. We have to
Bias mimicking?
Right, meaning they look homogeneous. Like, we look homogeneous across our teams that are leadership, right? And so it is, and because this is new, I would tell you that until we haven't yet gotten it right. It is so new that we're still building, and we're building quickly, but we're building together. There isn't enough people of diverse representation yet who can then therefore not only build, test, and then ensure the sustainment of AI. And so when you know that to be true, you can't necessarily, I would say, transparently go out and vouch and say we are, we have the most unbiased. What we can say is we have the framework.
We're the least biased?
We're going to attest to ensuring that the bias that we identify, we remediate, that we can tell you where it is.
So intention is what you want to project.
Intentionality, transparency, accountability, right, and trust, because that's where the trust comes in. So we never attest to be and know how to do everything right, but what we attest to be is truthful and honest, and then tell you where it could be wrong and what we will do to remediate it. And so I think that in this space is critical, right? Because everyone can't, they know. If you said that you have figured out how to be unbiased, then you're lying.
It's impossible.
It's impossible, especially when you know bias has 3 different levels, at least 3, right? Human, infrastructure, and system. We haven't even solved those as a society. So how can we attest as 2 massive organizations to solve them so that we can deploy solutions that are going to mimic what society hasn't yet done?
Well, it seems like you'd have to start a lot earlier in life than at the hiring process.
Correct.
And we heard a lot this morning about the education systems. Catherine, you live here in the Orlando community. You're a boomeranger, not a boomer, but a boomeranger. That is, you were with Microsoft, you went to Salesforce, you're back at Microsoft.
Yes.
Do you see interesting things going on in education from a foundational point of view in terms of deploying these technologies? We were chatting, Charisse, on the phone about some interesting things I see going on with tutoring using AI, where it can actually be much more effective than a one-on-one tutor, and that really surprised me. Are you seeing anything interesting going on in the education space?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing a lot of different use cases, right? And so some are successful, some are not. And the more we're transparent and we're also providing the reports and the case studies on what we've done or what we've tested, the more trust we're going to build within the community. And so, yes, we are testing. Yes, we are deploying this technology at scale. So you may have seen this week is Ignite for Microsoft. For those of you that don't know, this is one of our biggest customer conferences out in Seattle, Washington. And we're announcing a lot around.
Is there a reason you're not going?
Can't really fly right now. But yes, so I'm not going. I'm expecting, and I've hit the threshold on flying, so I'm not allowed to fly anymore.
So what goes on at Ignite now this week?
Yeah,
Big
and so
stuff?
Ignite is our biggest customer conference, and it's AI Copilot everything. So we've now started integrating our AI Copilot in M365 and the various platforms that we have, like Dynamics 365 and so forth. And so what you'll see is a lot of our ecosystem partners creating these integrations and these guardrails and starting to build in these additional safety layers and security layers, which we encourage and we co-build and we co-innovate with them, right? So lots of goodness going on this week, but back to your question on education, there is absolutely, we're already rolling it out, right?
Yeah.
Within our Office 365 and 365 platform. So it's almost like what I would describe as like an assistant. So you may have seen some of the demos where You can take a spreadsheet and turn it into a PowerPoint, et cetera. So they're very basic use cases, right? But AI is pervasive. We use it in our everyday life. Like every time you turn on Netflix, every recommendation is AI powered, right? So back to education, these kids are using it already,
Yeah.
right? It's pervasive in our everyday life.
They have to have access, though.
But you have to have access, yes.
It has the potential, it seems, to be the great equalizer,
Yes,
but they have to have access.
and that's Satya's dream.
Yep.
You're hitting right square on the dream
Satya,
of
the
Satya
CEO of
Nadella, the
Microsoft.
CEO of Microsoft, yes. He sees this as absolutely the opportunity to bring equity around the world, right? And start to reduce the bias and the inequality in communities, right? By making this accessible to everyone. So as you may or may not know, ChatGPT or OpenAI is actually a nonprofit. It's a $9 billion nonprofit valuation, but it's a nonprofit nonetheless, right? To make this technology accessible to everyone and anyone. Now, that comes with risk, right? And so we have to be really, really careful and thoughtful about how we start to govern and how we start to put those guardrails that you said, right? And be more transparent about the processes and how we develop this technology, how we test this technology. And then also just the accountability, right? I think we've all been watching these stories out there right now about the federal government asking, what do we do, right? How do we start to protect this? And Microsoft is absolutely in those conversations and absolutely at the table pushing for the accountability, right, and the transparency.
I think it's terrific. It has such promise to it. Charisse, when you go home and you chat with those three little guys of yours, something recently that you had bragged to them about that's going on in your work?
So I had the privilege, it is a privilege to bring your children to a conference recently, a technology conference, and they were able to see a bunch of founders actually pitch. And AI was obviously one of the most, I would say every single new startup had a component of AI. And my 15-year-old said, you know, he's like, one, this is cool, which was like 5 stars as an adult or a parent.
He spoke to you?
He spoke.
Yeah.
Unwillingly, willingly. He said, this is actually really cool. And he said, Mom, AI is big. And I was like, just a little bit, yeah. But what he recognized is that, one, that there are a lot of people that he had no clue, and like his peers have no clue, that are really trying to solve some of our greatest problems and or create and innovate in the most amazing ways. Blew his mind, because he got to sit in and watch the investors also. And then he got to hear how they were thinking about how to value, you know, each of the different startups. So he was like, he came back and said—
Did any of those people pitching look like him?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And that also was one of the critical reasons I brought him. I was a pitch coach, so I had to listen to all of this, several of the pitches. And he said, Mom, I think I'm going to think about the entrepreneurship program that we talked about for college. So just in one meeting or one event, he now has a seed planted about the I would say the opportunities and the possibilities that he has in creating a new life, and I say a legacy. So, yeah.
Well, apparently access matters, exposure matters, and it makes a difference. And I think you two and your companies are making a huge difference, not only in building companies that are good and profitable and create opportunity, but in making a real difference too. And the best compliment I could pay you, Catherine, and you, Charisse, is I can't wait to show this tape of the two of you to my grandkids.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you very much.